Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's presentation. My name is Evlix, and you're listening to the Evangelysm podcast, and I'm here to share with you my love of raiding priests and generally having fun in the world of Warcraft and spending too much time in Azeroth, the Outlands, and more recently in Draenor. Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of February, 2015, and in the past week I have mostly been learning the ways of becoming a podcaster. It's been hard work. Last week I did my pilot show. Couldn't think of the words. And it's been a lot more work than I expected. I've got a lot of learning to do. There's things that I need to do that I've never done before, like editing speech with Audacity, and little things like that. And it's getting it all right. One thing I have noticed is that I do a lot of dramatic pauses in my speech, which I need to correct because it's taken me a long time to edit them out because there just seems so much time in between me saying things. And I don't know why I do it. It's annoying. But there's many, many good reasons why I want to continue doing this. I enjoy doing it. Like I said, it's a learning experience for me. And I want to share with you my love for the game. And I find it really hard to put it down in words to get that enthusiasm across. The other thing that I've been doing this week is relearning how to put a website together from scratch, from a blank notepad document, and putting it online. With the blog that I've still got my blog, same name, Evangelysm, same sort of web address, which is www.evlix.co.uk. And that was all packaged for me. It's a off-the-shelf Google product, Blogger, and it allows you to just blog. You don't have to put any real thought into it. You choose a template and then you go onto a blank page and just type. And you can import things. It's what they call a what you see, what you get interface. And it is just that. You drag a photo in, it's there. I don't need to try. With the website, I've had to learn a few basics again. I studied it at university early in the early 2000s. Can't even remember the dates. 2001, 2005, between them sort of dates. And it was one of the things I studied, and it's changed a lot since then. And back then I was using, I don't know what they call them now, HTML editors. But now I'm just using a blank notepad and just typing in the HTML code. And HTML's changed an awful lot in its power and what it can do. And the site that I've knocked up is podcast.evlix.co.uk. And on there it's got links that don't all work at the moment. So, but there's links down one side. And there will be links to subscribe to iTunes, hopefully if they accept me. Stitcher Radio, again, if they accept me, fingers crossed. As well as my normal RSS feed, my Twitter, my Facebook account, that'll link with the show, and that sort of thing. And the other thing that I've got is an audio player on the webpage that you'll just be able to go to the webpage and download it from there if you so choose. And I was expecting that to be a lot of work. Previously, when I've tried that sort of thing, it was using real audio, converting music, and uploading it to the page, and doing all sorts of guff. And now it's an audio, a tag. You just put this audio tag into your HTML document, and away it goes. But it took me a long while to find that out. I was looking for the software that I needed and everything, and I didn't need it. So HTML's come a long way, and I've been learning that. And ultimately, that's impacted my time in WoW. Because of the job that I've got, I work an odd shift system where I work 4 days of 12-hour shifts. The first 2 days I work 7 in the morning till 7 at night. And the second 2 days I work 7 at night till 7 in the morning. And that means I then get a period of technically 4 days of uninterrupted time. And if that 4 days falls when my wife is at work and my son is at college, I'm sat at home on my own with pretty much nothing to do. So what I always have tended to do is fill that time with watching TV, playing Warcraft, as well as doing the household chores, of course, yes. But I spend too much time, in my wife's opinion, and probably in mine if I'm really truly honest, playing Warcraft when there's no one else around me. And this week I've not actually done that. I've played very, very little WoW. But I have still managed to level my second priest of the expansion, another priest called Evelix, because I wasn't very original. It was a character that I literally rolled and decided I was going to get it to level 10 just to keep my name unique on my merged realm, which is the Shadowsong Azune realm. Evelix's home server is Shadowsong, the original Evelix, and the new Evelix wasn't meant to be leveled. And every expansion I do this, I have a priest that I level for the expansion. And rather than roll a new one, I just thought, well, I've got this level 10 priest on Azune from last expansion when I was just reserving the name. I'll just use that one. So in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've leveled that priest up. And this week I hit 100. Yay, go me. And I was really shocked because what I had to do was go and do the Proving Grounds again so I could do heroics. Don't ask me why. It's silly. Why don't you make it so that if I've got a class already that can do it, I can just get the achievement and go, yeah, you can go in. But you can't. And it was really, really easy. Now, when I did it on Evelix, the original Evelix, back at the beginning of Draenor, the Warlords expansion, I leveled up to 100 and pretty much changed no gear because I was a Mythic Raider, Heroic Mythic Raider, whatever you want to call it back then, in Dragon Soul, in Siege of Orgrimmar. So I had the gear, but it was basically more powerful than anything I got while leveling until right at the very end. And because of the set bonuses, the gems, and all the extra enchants on it, it was still actually more powerful than the stuff that I was getting dropping in the Grand. And I think when I dinged 100, I was at about item level, I want to say 615, 620, that sort of level. No, it's like, no, I'm talking rubbish. I was at about 600, just around 600. And I found the actual Proving Ground, I won't say hard, but I didn't just go in and just one-shot them. And because at the time I thought the tank was made of paper, and I was gagging for mana. I couldn't get enough mana. And this new priest, I leveled up, the traditional way, and ended up less than the actual gear level that I did at the beginning of the expansion. And I went in and one-shot the Proving Grounds on both DPS and healing. I didn't even break into a sweat, and that made me realise that I've obviously adapted my playstyle to the way that we're now meant to heal in this expansion, which was really shocking. I didn't expect to go in there, and one shot I expected to struggle again because mana, paper, tank. But everything was fine. Now, I don't know whether they've nerfed the Proving Grounds. If they have, why? But I prefer to think that I've just become a little bit better player than I was even 2 months ago, which is good, I guess. It's the whole making yourself stronger thing. And it's just how Blizzard are manipulating us without us realising it. And they are making us better players if you want to try. And it makes me think, why do they not force this Proving Grounds thing on us more? Because to run a heroic dungeon, whether I do it with 4 guildies and queue up together, or whether I do it with 4 complete strangers and pug it together, I still need this silver Proving Grounds badge of honour. But if I want to do LFR, as long as I've got the 615 gear level, which, to be honest, isn't hard to get without setting foot into heroic, you can just go straight into LFR. Why? Why, Blizzard? Why? Why do you do this? Why don't you make it so that Proving Grounds bronze puts you into heroics, because that's probably good enough, and silver puts you into LFR? Or make it silver to go into heroics and gold to go into LFR. Not that I've done gold, but I'm sure I can do it if I really wanted to. I just don't see the point of me having to prove myself to myself and to whoever, when I'm quite capable of it. I know that. But hey, if they put it there, it's an obstacle to jump over, and you jump. So that's basically what I've done, really, and that's it, really. I've done very little WoW. I've obviously done my raids with the guild, I assumed. And thanks, guys, who have listened. Helka, yay. And we've made good progress in what is effectively our last week in Heimel. We still haven't killed our second boss on Mythic. We've had a few problems. We modified our strategy. Well, when I say modified our strategy, we modified where we stood in a round room. It made a huge difference for some reason. I don't understand why. Unfortunately, people like myself and one of our other main tanks, I won't name you, fun, we had a really, really bad raid. There was myself, as I say, one of the main tanks, and one of my other healers playing really badly. We were getting out of position, having to run through fire, stand in fire, getting sucked into the whirlwind on the fire on Twin Ogron, by the way. And we were just having a really, really bad time, and it was a real shame because we did get them down to about 6% and wiped, and then we couldn't reproduce that because it had been the end of a long night. We'd been raiding on the Twin Ogron all night, and it just became a little bit odd. And people were making way too many mistakes, and I was probably the worst culprit on the night. Other people, like I say, had bad nights too. But this week we'll be moving out of Heimel because Blackrock Foundry will be coming out, which I'll cover later, so I shan't go dwell too much on that. But other than that, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts as well, and trying to get some hints and tips on how they actually present the show. Not necessarily what they say, but the structure of the show and how they interact with the audience. And one of the things that I've picked up is the echo in my room. And a couple of people have commented on it, and it's, unfortunately, I sound as if I'm sitting in the toilet. I'm not, I promise. But my room is full of hard surfaces. I've done a little bit of research online about it, and I've got a tile floor, bare walls, 2 massive windows with blinds that are made of wood, and there's the phone. Thank you, Murloc. Yes, I've got a Murloc ringtone on the phone for text messages and things. And everywhere's just hard surfaces, and all the noise is bouncing around, and I need to work out a way of making that sound more cosy and warm rather than hard and bouncy, because the echoes sound bad. They sound bad compared to other shows. And yes, I'm using a gaming headset, and I want to make sure that I've got it in me to continue the show before I invest in a higher quality microphone, which is one of the things I will do if I decide I'm continuing. I've even thought about it before, just for general gaming and using it for TeamSpeak and Skype and things, because the sound quality is so much nicer. And they're just a little bit pricey. Well, they're not too pricey, but I haven't got lots of money, unfortunately. Don't send any in. That's not what I'm after. Not that I expect anyone listening here will. And it's just the way the show sounds that I'm a little bit disappointed with. And, of course, I'm a novice to this. So please do bear with me. The plan for the show going forward, by the way, I'm hoping to do it weekly. Early on, that may not be the case because, as I said earlier on, I am learning the process of putting a show together. Now, last week when I did the pilot, I did the speech bit in about 27 takes. And it wasn't one continuous take at all. It was lots of chopped up editing, and I'm trying to avoid that because it does take an awful lot of my time. I've been better prepared this time. I've got some show notes in front of me. And it's those little tiny things that hopefully will make the show flow better or more realistic. Not necessarily better, because the editing would make it actually better, because you stop hearing me waffle like I am now. So I'm just learning to become a podcaster instead of a guy just speaking on TeamSpeak. And I'm really good at that bit. Really am. And it's just hard for me to speak to you guys
and not have someone talking back to me going, oh yeah, that's rubbish, or oh, that's really good. So I'm having to make up your answers as I'm talking now. And I am not hearing voices. Do not panic. I'm not completely crazy. So that's basically what my week has been. Learning how to podcast. Playing a very little WoW. And as I said, putting the website together. The website isn't finished. If you go and look at it now, there's buttons that should work that aren't even buttons at the moment. They're just pictures. That will come in time. It's just a time thing, and I've just finished my 4 days on shift, so I've now come off today. I finished work at 7 o'clock this morning, went to bed a little bit later than I'd like, because I went to bed at about 8:30, and then was up at 12. So I haven't had much sleep, which is all good. It's all part of the sleep routine that I have. It's a short day today, so that I can hopefully get back into a sleep daytime pattern today. So that's this week. Done and dusted. The show will continue, of course. I'm not just going to sit here and waffle about what I've done this week. In the rest of the show, I'm going to cover a very brief news piece. And then I'm going to cover the main talk point of my show to this week, which will be the stats on loot in the Warlords of Draenor. I'll then cover the mailbox, which I haven't received mail. It's a tweet. But if you do want to send me mail, please do. It would be great. There isn't a show-specific account yet, so if it's just podcast@evelyx.co.uk, that's podcast@evlyxx.co.uk. Please send them to me. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear questions and around priests, around raiding, around being me. My thoughts on any subject you want within Warcraft. And after that mailbox piece, I'll be moving on to my tip of the week. In time, I want to expand that to be more than one tip. And this week, it's a learning piece all about the first tier of the priest talents and when to use them and that sort of thing. So, now, the news. So in the news this week, there is mainly really only two things of real note in terms of raiding, which is all we're going to cover today because there's no priest news. The big news is we're getting Blackrock Foundry. And of course the world boss, Rookmar. Which the world bosses seem to be a real letdown, this expansion. I don't know why. Nobody seems to be out and about killing them. Maybe that's just because I'm not looking in the group finder. Maybe not. Anyway, the world bosses seem to be lackluster. It's really not a big deal for me personally. There will be people that will be interested in that. But he's a world boss. He's in the Spires of Iraq, just off the coast. And some people will kill him. With him being in the Spires of Iraq, I'm guessing he's a big bird. Bird, squawk! And he'll be annoying. He'll probably have the whirly winds and fire that he spits out here. And that sort of thing. I'm not prepared for him. I don't care about the world boss. I'm sorry if that upsets people. But that's just me. I want to raid. World bosses, for me, no longer do it. The world bosses in original WoW, in vanilla, and even in TBC were epic. I fought Lethon back in the day. Level 43 was my first to visit there, wandering through Darkshire, and discovered the Twilight Grove. This weird night elf place in the middle of Duskwood. And discovered this big dragon there, and well, I was level 43. I knew nothing of the game, and I went to investigate with my friend Fallon, who was a guy that I used to work with in real life back in the day, and he was a rogue, I was a healer. We could kill anything, right? What did that skull on him mean? Who knows? Anyway, we attacked him, and I survived a little bit longer than Fallon did, poor boy. But not much. Hey, he killed us, but I was actually there when the server first kill was done, and technically I was part of it because I healed someone that was killing him. Go me. Obviously, back in the day, you didn't get the world tagging that we do now. Otherwise, I could have ended up with some juicy loot. But back then, the 40-man raids went and killed this boss, and I just healed someone that was in it. Does that make me a server first guy? Yeah, technically, I guess. But I wasn't eligible for loot, so the record books say different. And of course, then Blackrock Foundry. Now, Blackrock Foundry is getting staged out to us as gated content, as they've done with raids recently. Now, this week we get Blackrock Foundry on normal and heroic modes, which upsets the LFR raiders, but hey, come and raid properly. You can have your shot. It's not locked for content. If you raid normally, and you can pug normals if you've got the right gear and the right mentality, pug normals. It's easy. It is easy. And no one is locked out, despite what a lot of people on the forums are claiming. I shan't read into them because that's not my thing. I'll leave that to D2D, Heidi, on Sheep Moon. He covers that sort of thing. He does Guardian of the Forums, and he does it so well. Not quite as good as Total Biscuit was, but hey, when you're an innovator like Total Biscuit was, you can do that. And the fact that D2D has done such a fantastic job emulating that and getting it very close, in my opinion. So he's great. Sheep Moon, take a listen to that podcast if you really must. He's way better than I ever will be. And Total Biscuit, well, he's in a different league altogether. But that's his business. He does the Guardian of the Forums. I aren't going to repeat what people are saying on the forums about the gating on Blackrock. Obviously, next week, the Mythic mode gets opened. Now, I don't know whether it'll be the same deal as Highmore, where you don't actually need to clear Heroic to go in. That's not what my guild will be doing. We will be hitting our faces against Heroic, clearing Heroic. We don't know yet whether we're going to go back into Highmore Mythic once we've cleared it, or whatever, or we don't know. We really don't know yet. My hope is that we will clear Blackrock Foundry in a week or two, maybe 3, with our limited raid schedule. That does happen, unfortunately, because we raid 6 hours a week, and I might have said that before. We raid 6 hours a week, and we just don't have time to kill 10 bosses that are all brand new. So we will be doing that. We'll be going into Blackrock Foundry. We will be bashing our heads against the stuff. Once we've cleared it, we will probably go back to Highmore Mythic until everyone in the raid has got gear, which hopefully won't be too long. And then once people have got the gear, we'll probably just drop Heroic, because in all honesty, we don't need the gear that much. And it's probably raid then purely in Blackrock Foundry Mythic, and hopefully we'll get a lot more than 2 months, because effectively what we've had this past the past expansion, but the past half tier of Highmore is we've had about 6-7 weeks of raiding. We got the raid at the beginning of December, and then we had a 2-week break for Christmas and New Year. And then we've had 4 weeks of Highmore since. So in 6 weeks, that's all we've had Highmore open for. And it's not long enough. It really isn't long enough for the average Joe Blog guild, which is what I'm in, and probably most of you guys too. But anyway, next week, so February the 10th, the Mythic opens, and we might be able to go into that straight away. If the first boss is face roll easy, we will do that. 2, Raid Finder, guys. I don't feel sorry for you. I've got no shame in admitting it. Raid Finder, Wing 1, Slagworks, opens 17th of February. Week 2, 24th of February, Wing 2. 1, 2, 3, 4 bosses there. No, hang on. 3 bosses there, because Hansgar and Franzok is 1 encounter. The following week, there's nothing changing. I don't know why, but they've left a big gap between Wing 2 and Wing 3. February the 24th, Wing 2. March the 10th for Wing 3. And there's another 3 bosses there. And then finally, Black Hand unlocks on March the 24th. So that's a total of 6 weeks. That's great news. That's great news because it does mean that Blackrock Foundry is going to last a little bit more than 6 weeks. And that is the raid news for this week. My hope is that everyone here will kill the bosses on at least normal and have fun in those raids, because every guild can raid normal now. It's wonderful. You've got the flex modes and everything. So get in there, guys. If you're not raiding, get in there and try. LFR is a real horrible place to go. It doesn't give you any idea of raiding anymore. Not that it really ever did, but it was a lot closer then in Dragon Soul and in Mists. The LFR experience was sort of raiding, whereas now it's not raiding at all. It is what old Ghostcrawler said, it's tourist mode for the raiders who want to be, who can't. And if my experience in LFR was anything to go by, you'll actually get a quicker run if you try normals with an organised group. So try that. Please try that. Take it away from me. If that's the one thing you take away from me as a podcaster, this expansion, go and do normals. It is not really difficult. There will be challenges in there if you aren't used to raiding, if the group you're with aren't used to raiding. Go in there and have fun. It is proper raiding. It's just beginner mode. And have fun with your friends. Take your friends. Do that. If your guild isn't raiding, beg them to go with you. You will have fun in there, guys. Do it. As I said, the priest news, there basically is no priest news this week. There's been a few nerfs and things around on the PTR, but none of it affects priests. It's wonderful. The only thing I will say on that is please, Blizzard, please nerf my power word shields. It's, I have just begged for a nerf. Power word shield is a wonderfully powerful spell at the moment, and as a raid healer, it's the only spell I cast. If I wasn't doing that, I'd be doing it wrong. I really would be doing it wrong if that wasn't what I was doing. I am topping the meters by pressing one button. I could macro it. I really could. It needs fixing. Blizzard promised us that they wouldn't return to the Wrath method where you were able to spam your spells on people over and over and over again. And for the priest, well, for a disc priest like myself, that is what I have got. I have gone back to Wrath. I could tab through all of my friendly targets and just put power word shield on them, and I would be godlike. All I need to do is not stand in fire. That is my role in a raid at the moment, and that is dull. Dull. Please, Blizzard, fix me. And while we're on the terms of fixing, this one's for you, Altharian. Nerf monks! But to be honest, that's a different subject for a different day. Nerfing tank damage, please. Tank damage is ridiculous. Tanks are not there to be second or third on the damage meters. They really are not. Please, Blizzard, fix tanks, fix disc priests. Bring tank damage down, bring power word shield, make it more costly, make it weak. Well, don't make it weak, but make it weaker. Make me have to rely on something else to heal, because at the moment it's just boring. Anyway, I shan't rant about that anymore. Next week I will be able to report to you more and more detail on probably changes that they brought into Blackrock Foundry, as well as progression. I'll focus on my guild progression. I'll leave the progression of Method and Paragon and Blood Legion and all of these other Russian guilds and Chinese and Taiwanese guilds that may or may not cheat their way to victory. I'll leave that for Convert to Raid. That's their deal, not mine. So, that really is the news for this week. It's dull. I say it's dull. It's not dull. It's very short. And to be fair, it's a quiet week in news because of the fact that Blackrock Foundry is coming out this week. But that does remind me. How could I forget? WoW Insider. is no more as from today. Hopefully we'll find out today what all of the guys over at WoW Insider are doing now that AOL has basically laid them off. It was sad news. But if you haven't heard, WoW Insider, biggest news site, well, maybe arguably one of the biggest news sites, but it is the granddaddy of all WoW news sites, has closed. As of today, I don't know whether the site's up. Let's take a look. WoWinsider.com. Joystick.com. No, it's still there. One last call for alcohol. Yes. Nice reference. The site is still there. It is still running at the moment. I'm really, really hoping that the WoW Insider guys are either set up all on their own completely, or I have a sneaky feeling, if it hasn't been announced already, that they might go to Wowhead. Hello there, folks. This is me again. Well, I'm recording the show in pieces, and the part that I've just said there, I found out now that the guys from WoW Insider are actually setting up on their own. They're not going to Wowhead, as I sort of guessed wrongly, but they're set up as blizzardwatch.com. They've just received all the funding they need to do that. Good luck for those guys, and great for the community, because we've got a place where WoW Insider is basically going to continue under a new name. Same people, same deal, really good for the community. So now it's time for the main event. My big topic of the week, the first big topic of the week, I'm going to cover loot stats, which are more commonly known as secondary stats here in the world of Warcraft. So, at the beginning of Warlords of Draenor, the secondary stats that we've got on gear changed. In Mists we had Critical Strike, High Murloc, Heist, Mastery, Hit, Expertise, Dodge and Parry. Just taking a look at those stats very closely, we see that Critical Strike increases your chance to get bonus damage or healing when you deal damage or heal someone. Haste increases speed of your attacks and or heals, which is quite nice. In Mists it was split into melee haste and ranged haste and spell haste, but now it's all just wrapped up into one, but it's the same stat, it's haste. Then we've got Mastery. Now Mastery is an odd stat because what it does for a Disc Priest and what it does for a Holy Priest are very, very different. But it basically, in a nutshell, all it does, it increases a specific effect, if you like, of certain abilities for your spec and class. So as I say, on a Disc Priest, it increases the size of the shields that you put on people. For a Holy Priest, it allows you to get an effect, which is basically another renew randomly on another character, on a character that you heal. So you heal someone with any heal, and it gets the mastery effect, which I can't remember the name of this spell now, but it puts a renew on somebody, on the person that you just healed. For a lot of tank classes, it increases their passive mitigation. Arcane mages, it increases the damage that they've got when they've got more mana, and you know the sort of thing. It just increases something. It's random. Well, not random what it does, but it varies on what it does depending on the class that you play. And then there's Spirit, which increases the mana regen, and back in Mists of Pandaria, it also increased hit for certain damage dealers, mainly for the classes that could be a healer. So Boomkins, Shadow Priests, Elemental, Shaman, it increased their chance to hit with spells when they were in their damage dealing spec, and it allowed them basically to use the same gear for damage and healing. Hit increases your chance to successfully land an attack on your target. Expertise decreases the chance of your target to dodge an attack, which is sort of similar to Hit. Then there's Dodge, which increases your chance to avoid all attacks, regardless of which direction it comes from, it's a tank stat. As a priest, I wouldn't ever think of putting dodge on an item, basically because you'd hope that Blizzard hadn't managed to put dodge on a cloth piece. But in general, it's a tank stat that allows them to dodge attacks, makes them unhittable. And then there's Parry, which increased your chances to avoid attacks when dealt with from the front. So again, it's really aimed at tanks, so that when they're standing face to face with their opponent, they've got a chance to dodge any attacks that come from the front, which is basically where all of the attacks would come from anyway. So just having listened to what those are, 4 of them seem quite good. Crit, Mastery, Haste and Spirit. But apart from those, some of the others seem to be basically the same thing, just said different ways. A little bit of duplicity. There's hit and expertise. Hit allows you to hit things. Expertise, stop the things that you're trying to hit. Dodging, sounds like the same thing. It is. And for spellcasters in Mr. Pandaria, it was. As a spellcaster, you could get 3 ways of getting hit. You could have spirit, you could have hit, or you could have expertise. Why? It always felt a little bit odd with that. And then for the tanks, we had dodge and parry. And while they are very different in the real world, because if you dodge an attack, you just step to the side. Simple. If you're fighting someone with a great big sword, you parry with the sword. It's like a block with the sword. But essentially, they are the same thing. It's just your inability to be hit by something. It's increasing that rate that you'd not get hit. And it just always seemed odd that there was these things that were the same but very technically different. And in the end, Blizzard decided to remove those last 4. They decided to remove hit and expertise basically because they didn't want anyone to miss ever unless you were the wrong level. Dodge and parry, they sort of built into the classes so that if you were in a tank spec, you had this sort of static chance to dodge and parry. And a stat that they've added since, bonus armor, adds a little bit into that as well, I believe, but I'm not too sure on that. And the other reason that Blizzard stated was that these stats just weren't exciting. And they're not. They're Dollar's Dishwater. You got an item, you had to make sure that the item that you were replacing didn't take you down below a hit cap or a dodge cap or things like that. And it was annoying. You got loot, and you had to wait 20 minutes to do the maths in your head before you even thought about replacing them. And that was why sites like Ask Mr. Robot came out. So it did make sense when they announced that they were removed, because they were unexciting, they were more trouble than they were worth, to be honest. But rather than just take them out of the game and forget that items had these stats, they've added some new stats. They've added 3. They were going to add 4, but they chose in the end to do 3. They've added bonus armor, which increases the amount of armor that the wearer has. And it's really a tank stat, because it only benefits tanks. And for tanks, it is their strongest stat. It's a bit like Spirit is for healers. But then, again, as with Spirit and bonus armor, only appear on certain items, which is your 2 rings, your trinkets, your neck piece, and the cloak. Don't know why the cloak was included in there, but hey, they did it there. And they are the items that Spirit and bonus armor will appear on. And those items are therefore clearly for healers or for tanks. So that works out quite good. And those are the items as well that we can now enchant. Every other item we cannot enchant, so it's only the role-specific items that we can enchant. So bonus armor seems to be a really good stat. There is an odd effect where certain classes, if not all tank classes, get some form of attack power buff from having bonus armor, which I personally disagree with, because a tank isn't there to deal damage, it's there to absorb damage and look after the people it's protecting from. Me, my little healer self. Then we've got versatility, which increases the damage that you do, the healing that you do, and also reduces the damage taken. And lastly, we have multi-strike, which is a chance for your damage or healing abilities to repeat that ability, but at 30% of the original value. So if you cast a frostbolt that lands for 100,000 damage, and you get the multi-strike proc, you'll get another frostbolt that deals 30,000 damage immediately after. Sounds good. And the same thing, it works with heals as well. I don't really know how it works on my shields. Perhaps it works the same way that a crit would, which is it puts a little bubble for 30% of the damage instead of 100%. I haven't looked that deeply into the maths behind it all yet, but that's basically how multi-strike works. Generically, it's just works the same way, really, as crit. It's a 30% crit. So once again, it seems that we've got this sort of duplication of stats, because as I say, multi-strike just seems to be crit, just lesser. But bonus armor does seem to be really good. So, as far as I'm concerned, bonus armor, big thumbs up, should be there. Versatility, though, is this a new sort of concept we've got in stats. Not because of the increase in damage, because we've had application effects on trinkets and things before, but the actual reduction of income and damage, it's only from AoE damage, though. So, as well as boosting that damage, it reduces the damage that you take on certain effects. But to me, that just seems really strange, because surely that could have been just rolled into your normal armour. Maybe, if they want us to have it, just make certain items have more armour? I don't know. So then, I mean, admittedly, armour doesn't, at the moment, reduce spell damage at all, and perhaps the reason for that is that it would have broken PvP by making casters either ineffective if they changed nothing, or maybe just making casters extremely overpowered in PvE in order to balance it out in PvP. But surely the simple answer there for me is, in PvP, don't have this armor spell power reduction on the armor working from another player. They can already boost the stats of an item when we enter PvP combat to balance it out. Surely they could reduce the armor on an item or not boost the armor on the item in PvP combat. I don't know. I'm not into the maths at all of the game like that, and that's Blizzard's area of expertise, but to me, versatility just seems like duplication of effort. But it is just very, very dull. I think it's actually less interesting than hitting expertise. Hey, who am I to complain? I don't know. But it does seem very, very dull. But my biggest problem is actually with multi-strike. And it does sound good. I agree. But while we all love these free attacks, and for some classes like hunters, I know it is actually the best stat that they can get, and a lot of hunters are looking forward to Blackrock Foundry because of the amount of multi-strike there is on the items there, particularly on the tier sets. But I think it's a bad stat. I really do. It's lazy because, as I mentioned above, it just seems like crit light. And thinking back over the recent past, Blizzard have openly said that a lot of the lag that we suffer in game is because of extra healing effects from totems and that sort of thing, and damage effects as well, not just healing. But there's this passive damage bouncing around, passive healing bouncing around, and Blizzard have identified that as a cause of lag, and yet here we are with a stat that actually reproduces that effect by design. You know, it's not just something they hadn't thought of. They've deliberately put in this little extra attack that you get every now and again. Admittedly, it's not there every time you cast a spell, but surely as we gear up, it's going to get worse. I don't know. Again, have all the changes that they've done to reduce that, and then if they just put it back in the game, maybe time will tell. Maybe. I think we will. And for me, that's a big concern. I live life on a 2 meg internet connection. It's plenty enough to play World of Warcraft. I've raided on it on less. In fact, for all of my WoW career, I've lived in this one location since I've been playing, and I've worked up from a 500k connection up to a 2 meg. Whoop, go me. And that's a worry for me, because I can see us having lag, and it's not just bandwidth lag. There's so much going on in the combat logs that the game just cannot keep up. And as I mentioned earlier, it does just seem like critical strike, which is why I think it's lazy. It's just a critical strike light, whereby instead of doing 100% damage like you get on a crit, it only does 30%. And really, to me, again, while crits are exciting, having another crit chance, really, it's just lazy. So, bonus armour, yeah, let it stay. Versatility, it is a dull stat. Maybe they should have... Maybe it would sound more exciting if it was called amplification and then not reduced any damage taken. I don't know. And I think even then there is no need for it. Just remove it from the game. Damage dealers can have crit haste mastery. Do they need any more stats? I don't think they do. It really doesn't. Amplification, versatility, it's just adding damage output. You can bake that into mastery. You can bake that into a slightly bit more crit. Not crit chance, but you can say have it so that it increases the critical amount. So instead of being at 100% for any crits, you get 102%. Again, it's then keeping down that combat log feel of extra attacks. I don't know with that one. But multi-strike really is my biggest beef, as I said. It isn't a dull stat. It is really good in that respect, but it has its major flaws with this really big potential for the lag causing, and therefore I say we remove it completely, and where stuff would have multi-strike, give 30% of the crit value. Instead, make it so instead of having 10% crit, 10% or 100 multi-strike, give them 30 crit. Surely that fixes the problem. It keeps the combat log entries down to the minimum, and it makes us crit more. People see bigger numbers more often, and that will excite people. That's my thought on loot stats, on the items. There is the other bigger issue of the actual randomness of the loot, but for now I think that's enough of me wobbling on about loot stats. It's my first big topic of the week. If you've got the views on it, please contact me in the show. My show email is podcast@evlyx.co.uk. That's podcast at evlyxx.co.uk.
There's a letter in your mailbox.
So that sound means we have some mail. Well, in actual fact, we don't, because it's early days of the show yet, and I've not really been out there for much time, and therefore had very little hope of getting mails. But I have been tweeting, and there's a couple of guys out there in Twitterland that I'd like to thank. First of all, just purely because it was chronological, Lunchbox, or at What's Aggro, for the really fast feedback he gave me. Encouraged me to continue with the show. And also to another guy called Roger, who goes on Twitter by the name of at Zen Buddhist, and for the constructive feedback that he gave me on the actual web design part of the show. Thanks to those guys. You've been a great help, and everyone I've spoken to in the guild, there's a couple of people in the guild who sort of give me positive encouragement. If you need to contact me, if you want to contact me, help me, give me some dialogue. The show's got a podcast. The show has got an email, which is podcast@evlyx.co.uk. That's podcast @evlyx.co.uk. We've got a show Twitter account, which is at Evangelysmcast. Now, Evangelysm is EVANGELYSM. Cast, all one word, of course, because it's Twitter. Then there's my personal Twitter account, which is at Evlyx, EVLYXX. I've got one last thing before we wrap up the show. It is my tip section, which this week focuses on the priest and the specialisation choices that you get at level 10.
This is how we do it. All hands are in the air.
And now for some priest tips. In this section, each week, I will share with you some hints and tips on playing a priest. I'll cover talents, abilities, and how to deal with certain boss mechanics in raids and dungeons. As they say, the very best place to begin is the beginning, so let's take a look at the 3 options you have when selecting a talent specialisation for your priest at level 10. Our first choice is the Discipline Priest, often referred to as the Disco or Disc Priest. They use magic to shield allies from taking damage as well as healing their wounds. Usually the Disc Priest is utilised as a single target or as a tank healer. Next we have the Holy Priest, who is a versatile healer who heals damage received in battle on individuals or groups, and they even can heal from beyond the grave. The Holy Priest's role is usually as a group healer, but they're still very capable tank healers. And finally, we have the Shadow Priest, who, rather than healing allies, are powerful damage dealers who focus on using shadow magic, especially damage over time spells, against their enemies. As I mainly play a healer, expect lots of focus on the Discipline and Holy specs. I hope you found this useful, and I promise that we'll get into more advanced topics in the weeks ahead. And that brings us to the end of the very first official episode of the Evangelism podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me, Evelix, you can do so via Twitter, which is @Evelix, or via the show Twitter account, which is @EvangelismCast, or direct to the show via email, which is podcast@evelix.co.uk. Thank you and goodbye.